Today, a very ironic, let's say, person, because he's a doctor, and I just came out of a little bit of a surgery yesterday. But today we have Raphael, who is here to give us a fair bit of knowledge. So, I guess, what and how did you become a doctor? What made you decide, just fuck it, let me do it?
Yeah. That's a very good question, bro. So first of all, I didn't want to be a doctor at first. I wanted to be a football player. When we grew up in Europe, most young boys play football, and I was pretty good at playing football. I played for a youth national team in Denmark. And what happened was when I was 15, 16 years old, I got injured and couldn't play for 9, 10 months. So I got out of the game, and my career, very short career, actually ended there. So I decided, why not just study medicine? I'd liked medicine since I was in 8th grade. So that was literally just the choice that I made. I was probably also, it was probably because my mother was diagnosed with brain cancer as well when I was like,
Oh, wow.
5, 6 years old. So I decided that I wanted to be able to help families like those doctors had helped my mother and us by helping her with the brain cancer. And today she's very well. Only has some balance issues, but nothing else that's serious at all. So since 8th grade, I was like, okay, well, I can't be a football player anymore. So let me do this doctor thing. So I was pretty determined from being 15, 16 years old to starting at the university when I was 19, and I just went at it since. So,
Well, obviously, super happy that your mom's good, because that's obviously important, right? Because
thank you.
there's only one woman that's always going to be that woman, right? So
Exactly.
that definitely makes me happy inside. But I mean, obviously, it's a super noble thing to do, because when you see your parents ill, especially at like 5 or 6 years old, like that must kind of feel a little bit helpless, right?
Of course, it was. I mean, you're just a little child. You can't do anything, and my father was doing everything he could to tend to my mother, and it was very hard in the beginning because I have a little brother as well, and we got I don't want to say we got shipped off to my uncle, but we stayed at my uncle's place for a couple of weeks when all the surgeries and my mom was at the hospital. All this stuff was going on. So it was hard to understand, but I knew there was something wrong. And obviously, when I got older, I started understanding everything and what happened, and obviously became very grateful for how everything turned out. I even read her journals last year, actually,
No way.
from back then, and it's just crazy how just seeing everything from the doctor's point of view now, because I could understand everything. It was just crazy to see it from that point of view as well. Yeah.
Reading those journals, what was that like?
It was crazy, bro. It was a lot of emotions, especially because now I understand the risk of what she actually went through. So I was just very grateful that she went through it all right, and everything turned out how it did. So it was very good.
Well, I mean, the good thing is, I mean, she's done an amazing job with you. We know that as well. So that's it's
I
plus points
appreciate
all
that.
round. It's plus points all round. So now, I mean, obviously, with everything going on, and thank God we can talk about it, because Rumble, thankfully, isn't YouTube.
Mm.
What is your general consensus of what's been happening for the past 3 years with this COVID situation?
It's funny. Every time I get this question, I remember back to February of 2020. I was at this network meeting with an organization, and these guys are from different parts of the world. They work in tech, or telecommunications and sell cars, and they're just young men who wants to become better.
Hmm.
And we were at this meeting, and they asked me, because I was the only one who had the medical knowledge. They asked me what's going to happen, what's the fuss about with this new COVID thing. And I had actually read about it in the journals and read some very nice articles from people who understood what they were talking about. And they
Hmm.
were all saying it's not dangerous. The infection fatality rate, which means how many die after being infected, is very, very low. And they even saw that on the first plane. I can't remember what the first plane was called that came from China, but they saw the fatality rate was very low. So I told them this is not something that we have to worry about. This is probably just like the flu, like the common flu. And that was my last meeting with these guys.
Oh dear.
Because 2 weeks later, I'm from Denmark, and Denmark got shut down because of Corona. So this was very, very ironic. I had just told these new guys that I've just met that they shouldn't worry. It's not going to be serious at all. And 2 weeks later, the whole country shuts down. And obviously, it's fine. I mean, they didn't know that much in the beginning,
Hmm.
so they were making a safe choice for the population. But after the first 2 or 3 months, it just became apparent that these measures were too much. Let's just put it that way. They were way too much. People were not dying of it, and the people who were dying at the age of 80, 82, 86. I mean, they're all already old people who maybe would die of the flu anyway. And when you look at numbers like people who died from the flu, they were very similar to people who died from Corona. So I had been opposed to this for a long time. All these measures, all this testing, it didn't make sense. This is what they tell us in medical school. When you take a test, when you test someone for something, there needs to be an action afterwards. Like there needs to be a reason. You can't just test people who are asymptomatic. We never
Yeah.
test people who are asymptomatic. That doesn't make sense at all. Because then you find something. And sometimes you can find a test that's positive, but if the patient is asymptomatic, what are you going to do? You have to do something. But it doesn't make sense to do anything when the patient is asymptomatic. So it was very strange seeing this from the inside as well, seeing colleagues, other doctors, other medical students be afraid. And I was actually a bit sad as well, seeing how people were manipulated to think all of these things. So it was very hard being on the inside of all this, not really be able to do anything, but because I was almost done with medical school back then. Now I'm a young doctor, and we don't really have that much to say. Like, it's always the senior doctors, and you know, we can't really influence anything. So
Yeah.
it was hard to not say anything. Obviously, I talked to my patients about this stuff, and try to calm them and give them logical reasons for what they should do, like stay healthy, eat properly, go exercise, because that is the best thing you can do.
Yeah.
This was before the vaccine. So all in all, it was very odd seeing how everyone was manipulated, and especially doctors and nurses who I thought should know better. But unfortunately, that was not the case.
Yeah. Because it's strange as well, because I mean, I certainly share your opinion, because, well, I say your opinion, it's not even opinion, right? It's just simple fact.
Yeah.
Because I can remember just right at the start, I was like, okay, well, I don't trust China for shit. There's no way that the data coming from China is going to be anywhere near realistic. So, okay, I'll wait. Fine, it's in I think it was Italy was first place where it got really bad. So then I was just like, okay, cool. Let me see what happens in Italy, and then we'll see what happens. Okay, so wow, actually, turns out that, yeah, China's data was actually pretty damn reliable, And I'm like, oh, okay, so it's like less than 1%, I think it was 0.08 or 0.8 at the time, the mortality rate. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, that's not that bad. And then we start finding out about vitamin D deficiencies, and then we're finding out about vitamin C deficiencies, and then it's like, oh, okay, so these people are just their bodies are already fucked, right? And like you were saying, it's like, okay, so hold on a second. If the average life expectancy is around 82 or 78, dependent on the country, right?
Mm.
And these people are dying with COVID, not even from it, but they're dying with COVID, and they're like 89, 90, or even older. And I'm like, oh, okay. Like I'm done with the mask now. And then all of a sudden it's just one draconian thing, another draconian thing. It's like, what was it like in Denmark? Because here in Spain was pure insanity. Pure insanity. Even if you were walking in the street by yourself, no one around you, mask had to still be on.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember in Barcelona. But Denmark was in the beginning, we didn't really need mask. We need mask at in the hospital and some places indoor. I mean, they've changed this so many times, so I can't really remember exactly when and where. But we had to wear a mask at the hospital, and we had to wear a mask indoors in restaurants and grocery stores. So every place that was public indoors, we had to wear masks. But that was not really the issue. The issue was we had this COVID pass as I think one of the first countries in Europe, actually,
Yeah.
where you either had to be vaccinated or you needed a test that was at least 48 or 72 hours old, depending on if it was a PCR or an antigen test. So you couldn't really move about in society. You couldn't really do it. You couldn't go out to eat. You had to sit outside in the middle of the winter. You couldn't go out, to any places, bars, clubs, anywhere. You had to, you needed a test to go see your doctor or your dentist, or go to the hospital. And you had all these cancellations of appointments of people who were in programs for cancer and other cardiovascular disease, for example. They couldn't go to the hospital anymore to get checked. So there were all these things that prohibited normal people from doing what they actually had to do because of this all these measures. Luckily, we didn't have to wear a mask outside, which is crazy.
Yeah.
But yeah, we had a bunch of other things as well.
See, it's kind of bizarre because as a doctor, you take the oath, right? You take the oath to make people healthier, happier, and prolong their lives, not, essentially say, hey, I'm a doctor, and yeah, I'm not going to see you unless you have a test. I'm just not going to see you. It's just, it's the most, I mean, it's almost evil, really, in a way, right? Like it really, there's something so wrong with that. It's like yesterday when I was in the hospital, I was there and I was just looking around, looking over to my left, to my right, and I'm just like, man, hospitals are like a fucking battleground, man. It's but in such a beautiful way. It's like you've got your last day over on one side and your first day on another. It's like one guy was being wheeled in on a stretcher, and like the guy was just, he had the neck brace, his arm braced up like this. Don't know what the fuck happened to the guy, but they're rushing this guy in, and then about 2 minutes later, out comes out this mum and father with this newborn baby, and I'm like, man, that's fucking crazy. Because it's maybe it's different for me, because that's like, I'm never in the hospital. I never go. I never need to go to the doctors, and I get ill maybe once every year and a half or something. But do you think it's do you kind of have like a similar thing still? Or is it kind of just a normalized thing for you now?
Yeah, I would say it's very normalized. In the beginning, when you see sick people and when you see, we can talk about everything here, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So when you see, people dying, dead corpses, all of this becomes very normal. You don't really see it as, it's like when we do surgery, for example. Like when we do surgery, the only thing that is visible is the place where we're doing the surgery itself.
Mm.
So everything else is just, we put like towels and stuff on top of everything else. Not towels, but papers. So we only focus on one thing. And I would say life in the hospital is pretty much the same. You just focus on this one thing because everything else is pretty normalized. The sirens from the ambulance is normalized. The emergency calls, it's normalized. It's just part of your day-to-day job.
Mm.
Seeing people with the braces and coming in, laying on, it's very normal now. So it's just, you get used to it, like everything else, I guess.
See, it's an interesting analogy, right? Because what a lot of people do is they look at the whole rather than just kind of looking at, hold on a second, we're doing surgery here in this specific place because there's a specific issue here in this place. Everything else should be almost irrelevant, right? And just be focusing on the issue. Because do you generally look at life like that now? Or have you kind of just always looked at things in that kind of a perspective?
Well, it depends. Are you talking about patient? What do you mean, like when I talk to patients, or how?
So when you're generally looking at life, right, do you kind of automatically think, right, there's an issue over here? With using it as like an analogy, saying, okay, let me scalpel this problem that I have and let me focus on this issue. Everything else is almost irrelevant whilst you're dealing with that kind of a problem. And then you sort of come back to life later, or are you sort of still in your personal life when you're dealing with issues? Is it more that you look at it as a whole picture?
No, I definitely look at it as a whole picture and see how everything depends on each other. And then when I need to solve an issue, yeah, I'll dive. I'll focus on one thing when I have to solve one issue. But I always try to see how things are interdependent and how they depend on each other. But yeah, I definitely have both of the sides, and I think it's important to have both, like having the good overview. But when you need to dive deep, you can also dive deep.
Yeah, see, it's important because when people are so laser focused, I guess, all of the time, like you can just focus on one problem and then be like, right, the whole rest of your life you just kind of forget about. And you're like, hold on a second, you've got one terrible thing in your life. Hold on. What about all of the other grateful things that you could be grateful for, right? And a lot of people kind of forget about that. So I like that train of thought. So I mean, what's a general sort of problem health-wise that just generally people would have, and how could they fix that? Like what do you see most commonly in men? Because now you deal mainly or predominantly with men, right?
Only with men, actually. I only deal with men. Only work with men. That's my whole consultation business. And when I'm at the hospital, obviously I have both men and women, but in my consultation, I only do men. And men usually have chronic issues from a very poor lifestyle, from low to no exercise at all, and to bad food habits. And all of this results in pretty much the same diseases like metabolic syndrome, or which turns out to diabetes in the end. When you see men who have this huge belly, it's the result of a very bad diet filled with processed foods and it's always no exercise. So they have these chronic issues, whether it be headache or constipation. It's all these chronic issues in the modern day actually stem from pretty much the same thing, and that's the lifestyle. So the one thing that they can change is definitely their lifestyle, which is what they eat and how they train. Those are like the two of the five foundation that I always talk about when I talk to my patients.
And when it comes down into training, because I mean, you know what it's like nowadays on the internet, especially on Instagram and everywhere else, right? You just scroll in, okay, this guy's got this regime, this other guy's got this regime, his is better because it's, you know, X, Y. Like, do you think it's actually much simpler? Because a lot of the time things are very much overcomplicated, and you have definitely got a much more simple and proven as well, especially with the guys that you've worked with that I know personally that have seen insane results. But do you think it's much more simple? Is there like a one rule fits all, or is it more a person to person basis?
I would say 80% of it is just doing it. 80% lays in actually just training, and keeping it simple is very important. Obviously, then you have differences between people, but if you just train and you are, if you train and you keep training, even on days you don't want to, then that does a huge difference. Like just being training consecutively 5 days a week, and it doesn't really matter what you do, just train hard and train properly, and then it doesn't really matter. Obviously you can always be better, but I would say 80% of it is literally just doing it.
That's definitely something that so many people, especially you guys watching this, is going to go over a lot of their heads, right? Is just how simple the act is of saying, right, I just woke up, I feel like shit. Maybe I was out last night, maybe I was out having a party, maybe I had a date or whatever, right? Fuck it, I'm going to the gym. And then just going. Because it's like a lot of people like to come up with excuses or X reason or Y reason. Yeah. And they tend, you know, not to, it's not that they don't care, but their actions don't show that they care, right?
Exactly. And yeah.
How do you help sort of motivate, say those people, basically everyone, even I do it, you know, I wake up some mornings, I'm like, I'm not going to the gym. I'm not. Yeah. So how do you motivate those people? Or is it more of like an internalized thing that you kind of help them to get to?
Yeah. So, I mean, first of all, I like to work with, and that's a thing that I can choose myself because I have this private business. I work with people who are already motivated and who are already used to working hard, and they know that they need work to reach their results. But obviously for people who are not like that, because that's the majority of people, they think that if they go to the gym, they need a perfect workout. Like they need a 10 out of 10 workout. And that's just not the reality. You can't go and have a 10 out of 10 workout every single time. That's not how it works. Sometimes your leg just doesn't work. Your arms are just not that strong. Like last week, something bad. You didn't sleep properly. You didn't eat properly. Something, you know, there's always something, right? This was something that I learned when I played football almost professionally when I was younger, is you just go to train and give it your all. And then sometimes you're not at 100%, but that's fine. You went. It's still better than not going at all. So I would say for these people, it's what do they call it? Paralysis by analysis is what they call it, right? They want a perfect training, and you can't get a perfect training every single time. So it's better to go and burn 50 calories than not going at all, because at least you went, and then in your mind you're actually sticking to your word, and then you trust yourself, and that's just building up self-confidence, which is something entirely different, right? Yeah. But all these things are interconnected. So I would say it doesn't matter if you, of course you want to go and go 100%, but if you have a bad training, or if you're tired, it doesn't matter. Just go do it.
It's these kinds of thoughts and what's the word, belief system, because obviously being so young and having whilst all of that was kind of going on with your mother, how did you get to the point where you're at now? Because, you know, going and training so hard and getting to that level in any fucking sport, or really with anything in life, right, is very, very difficult. So where did these kind of belief systems come about? Was it just by maybe your father? Was it just from yourself, a coach? Or how did the modern day you form into this, well, the version that you are today?
Yeah, it's a very good question. And I would say most of it is because of my father. We immigrated from Iraq to Denmark when I was younger. And my father went through a lot to come here. And everything that he went through is, I would say, what I do is nothing compared to what he did. So the gratefulness for what he did for me and my brother and my mother, obviously, it's what keeps me motivated. And because he almost sacrificed his life for us to be here today. And how would I even look myself in the mirror if I didn't go 100% for whatever I wanted to do when my father almost died coming here? I didn't see my father for a year when he came here before us. So his sacrifice is definitely what motivates me. What he does, what he went through when he came here, even being a very highly educated man, he couldn't work here. So he worked at a supermarket, even though he was he had a university degree. They wouldn't accept it here, so he worked at a supermarket. And he never flinched. He just did what he was supposed to do, took care of his family, took care of his sick wife, who had just been diagnosed with cancer, and his two small boys. So he's a very, very good example of what I want to be. I never think that I can ever be 1/10 of what he did or do what he did. So that's the motivation for me, is being just a little bit just like my father and what he did for us.
That's pretty profound, because I mean, so many people, especially in the Western world, I mean, with your eyes and with what you've gone through and your father's been through, they almost lack a gratitude, right? I think, and especially when it comes to health or just your general self-confidence, it's gratitude.
Mm-hmm.
I think is everything. For you, does gratitude still sort of affect your day? Do you have any sort of things that you specifically every day you're exceptionally thankful for, or you kind of consciously make an effort to be grateful or think about, or is it just kind of like a day by day, and you're thankful when things sort of come across you?
So every single day, and this was a habit that I actually started using when I was 18, 19 years old. I started writing down one new thing every single day that I was grateful for. So whether it was having like just small things, even just small things like having a table where I could put my computer, being able to sleep in a bed, having a roof over my head, like very, very simple stuff. Obviously, sometimes bigger stuff like being able to buy nice things, stuff like that as well, right? But every single day, and that's something that I've incorporated. So every time I am, say, I lack motivation, or I don't want to do something, I always think back to that, like I got this because I did all the work before, so I'm grateful for that. So I should keep being grateful. Or if something bad happens, then I always remember, okay, this bad thing happened, but you still need to be grateful because you still have both of your arms, you still have both of your legs, you can still see, you can still talk. I still have the ability to do whatever I want. I can achieve everything, right? So gratefulness is a pillar in my mindset. There's yeah, definitely.
Does it come from God, the feeling, or is it more of just kind of thanking the universe? Where does that, or where do you funnel that gratitude to? Is it yourself? Is it your family, God? Where does that gratitude go?
It goes primarily to my parents and God. Definitely God. I'm a Christian. I'm very religious. I pray every single day. I thank God every single day for everything that I have. for everything that he's given me. And I thank my parents every single day for what they've done for me, at least in my mind.
Yeah.
And so that's where the thankfulness goes. I would say it's towards God and my parents. Yeah.
See, a lot of people, when they talk about health, they don't even think about they just essentially think about their body, rather than also thinking about their, I guess, spiritual health. Is what do you think about the importance of spiritual health in the modern day?
I think many people lack spiritual health. They're new God. They say they're atheists, but in in real life, their God is the media. Their God is the news. That's who they worship. They worship the experts, the science, as we like to call them. So I would say a lot of people lack the spiritual health, and it means that they can't really manage their stresses in their everyday lives, because stress management is very, very important. And when you don't believe you have control of everything that happens in your life, or you don't believe in a higher power, you believe in other people, then I would say it makes stuff a bit more difficult for you than not believing. Because what are you losing by believing in God? Nothing really. So I would say most people, I don't know if most people, but people definitely lack the spiritual health, and that affects them in their stress management.
Yeah, because, especially nowadays with, depression, suicide. I mean, suicide, obviously, because of COVID, it's just fucking skyrocketed to hell. I think it's going to get a lot worse, especially with the recession that we know is coming and everything else. It's going to be a very, very difficult time. And when you're going through those difficult times, do you just kind of take a step back and say, right, I'm stressed, let me rely on God, or do you pray in those moments? What's your sort of stress management technique?
Yeah. So I would say I split it up in two types of management. I have the physical management, which is training, like going for a very high intensity run or boxing. And then I have the passive management, which is meditation, praying, and thinking, stuff like that. And sometimes I would say I always go for the physical activity, physical category first, because that usually solves the problem when it's a minor issue. But when it's a major issue, like a life crisis, like you lose a family member or something, then going for a run might not really solve the issue. Then it's more the passive, which is the meditation or praying to God. And in the end is just putting your life in God's hands, and obviously working every single day. You can't just put your life in God's hand and then just wait and see. Yeah. And let's see what happens now, right? We all know that's not how it works.
Like law of attraction, people. Hey, I'm just gonna sit here. Yeah. I'm gonna think about an elephant in the room, and it's gonna fucking manifest. I swear. Yeah. Surely enough, that elephant it can't fit in your house. You realize that?
Yeah, exactly.
But, it's because a lot of people as well, they don't have any means of really identifying the problems that they have. Because one thing that you just said, and I do this all of the time. I'm like, right, okay, is this X kind of an issue, or is this something? Because you need to know and identify the kind of problem that you're having to then identify the solution to the problem. Well, sometimes there's not even a solution that can be made, right? How do you go about identifying your issues just on a day-by-day basis?
It's a very good question, especially because so many people can't identify their issues because their mind is so cluttered with so many things, like their work, their relationship with their wife. All of these things clutters their mind and makes it harder for them to really see things from an objective perspective. So I try to be what I do to try to be as sane as possible is eat properly, train properly, see everything from an objective point of view by identifying my feelings towards something. So when I think about something and a feeling comes up, I identify it as a feeling. So I don't act based on that feeling, but if I'm sad about something, then I identify, okay, that actually made me sad. Why did that make me sad? Why is that emotion attached to that thing? So that's what I do. I try to see myself from a bird's eye perspective and identify, okay, so that's actually an emotion, that's actually a thought. And then I delve deeper and say, okay, so why did I have this emotion towards this thing? Why am I thinking this? And then I try to go deeper from there.
So it's kind of like transcendental meditation, right? It's like when you're doing this, because for me, I do exactly the same, right? I can sit there and it's kind of like I have another version of me watching me and watching how I feel and just really just accepting the thoughts and not saying, right, okay, this is a fucking bad feeling and this is a good feeling. No, it's like, okay, I'm a human being. Sometimes I'm going to feel good. Sometimes I'm going to feel bad. Like there are going to be things that are going to piss me off. And there's going to be things which also on the flip hand side, it's just going to make me feel fucking amazing. And for you, is it kind of the same in you can kind of go back in yourself? I don't know if it's like a spiritual thing or what. It's very difficult to explain to someone that hasn't had it, right? How would you try and explain it?
It's very hard. How would you say that? I would say the way that just like you said, right, going back and looking at your past experiences, see how you dealt with them back then, remember why you did what you did based on what it was. And sometimes we do things because of emotions. I mean, we're still human, right? I like to say that I identify my emotions and then I try to be objective about it. But of course, I do something, based on my emotions sometimes. But I think it comes down to experience, having handled something earlier that looks very similar, just like pattern recognition. Like last time this happened, I felt this and I did this, and then this happened. So you, just like you said, you go back and then you look at yourself, like what did you do in the past, and try to use that experience.
Yeah, it's there's so much that you can learn from your past, just in general, that just sitting down and actually being like, right, okay, kids, a lot of people, they don't even really sit down and figure out where they're at in life, right? Because a lot of people, they're like, right, Raf, I've got this insane plan. I want to get from where I am now. I want to go and achieve all of these amazing things and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, okay, so you want to embark on your hero's journey, but how are you going to do that if you don't know your starting point, where you're starting the journey, right?
Yeah,
because
very good point.
if you're going to start, you need to know where you are first. So a lot of people don't really even get to that point, because your consciousness is almost a lot higher, I would say, than most, because most people just act irrationally, emotionally, and on demand, right? And on demand of external influences, whereas you act on okay, or as much as possible, right? On okay, where's this going? Where's this leading to? What's going on? And where, not only just where you're starting from, but do you also re-evaluate your life often? And you're like, okay, I'm still on the journey to X, but you know what? Maybe the destination needs to change a little bit. Maybe the road is closed, or there's road works going on, and you're like, right, okay, I need to shift. Do you do that often?
Yes, I really do. I don't go back and say I wish I did something else, because that's first of all, there's just a waste of energy, waste of thoughts. It's going back and thinking, I wish I did something else back then, because what we did back then turned us into what we are today. But you can always say, okay, with my knowledge today, what could I have done back then, and what would maybe have happened? And then you can maybe use that as a pointer towards the future. But of course, I reevaluate my life very, very often. I think about my future every single day. I try to be as deep as possible when I do work, but I also try to have the general overview, like, why am I even doing what I am doing today? What is the general goal? And we all know what the general goal is, of course, but having that in mind at all times just makes everything easier, and the day-to-day tasks way easier. Because sometimes you meet people and they open up new doors. They give you new roads to go. And then you have to evaluate, okay, so is this a good opportunity? Should I go for this, or should I stay in my lane and go this way? So I would say I evaluate my life and my day-to-day actions very, very often. I think that's crucial. You should always do that when you have new information, for example. Like, people who have the same opinion on something, even when they have new data or new information, they're just brainwashed, too rigid in their thinking, right? And I don't think that's a good idea in the end.
Yeah, that's definitely not healthy. He says as he smokes a cigar.
Raise his tea.
Yeah, well, we've got it. Cheers, everyone. But it's not healthy to just be so rigid in your ways, because if someone is, like you were saying, if someone comes into your life and they give you a shortcut, right? A shortcut on that journey, or they say, right, you know what, you can carry on going straight and via your route, but actually, look, I've already done this. Here's a shortcut. Take it or leave it, right? But I think a lot of people, like you said, they're getting their advice, or lack thereof, and brainwashing from their God, right? From the media and just from these social influencers online who genuinely don't care about anything other than money, right? So how and where could people go, do you think, to get actual good advice, to try and find those little shortcuts in life?
That's a very hard question, because the real advice and the advice based on like proper data is almost always hidden, because the people who are interested in giving you the other advice, they're not interested in you seeing this advice, if you know what I mean. Like, you have the proper advice, and then you have the advice they want you to go for. And the proper advice is probably hidden more, so you have to really go find it. And I would say the first thing you need to do is taking a step in your mind and saying, okay, I really want to know more about this thing. I want to get healthier, or I want to know more about the situation in this place, or what's going on between these two countries, or should I get vaccinated? What should I do, right? And not just trust whatever is in your television. And then you have someone who immediately, when the television says something, when the people in the media says something, they're immediately against that. And I don't think that's healthy either. Like, okay, have a bias towards it. That's fine. What's being said in the media, but you should also delve deeper into it yourself. Like, look for the opposite point of view. Look for the opposite opinion about this topic. Think, why isn't it funny that all these different people and articles and newspapers have the same opinion? How is that happening? So look at the subject that you are thinking about, and then go for the opposite opinion of what's been told to you by most people. I think that's a good starting point.
Yeah, I agree. And I couldn't agree more though, because especially when everything is as polarized as it is, right? You've got the right, you've got the left, and that's it. Like, that's it. There's no centered middle ground where you can
Mm,
see through both bullshit sides, right? Because
mm.
there's both sides are essentially, they are trying to get your brain, really, right? They're trying to indoctrinate you into, it's kind of like a cult, I think. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
And
agreed.
and having both sides as being a cult, like, if you're on one side, now I can't listen to you on the other. And it's like, whoa, 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 hold on a second. That's not how you interact as a fucking human being.
Mm,
You say, okay, here's your opinion. Okay, that's interesting. Let's sit down, let's have a conversation about it, and figure out and try and work out what's true, and have fun and respect each other, right? Because do you think now a lot of this stuff, when it comes down into what's the word, political discourse, has become so, it's kind of just taboo. It's almost embarrassing, right, to talk about politics nowadays. Do you even get into any of the politics talks with anyone anymore? Because I just find it a massive waste of time.
yeah, I agree with you 100% on this one. I would say it's for me at least, it's a bad idea to do that anymore. I don't really talk politics to anyone anymore. I don't really try to argue with anyone. I don't try to win people over to my side. I don't believe that that is my job. When people believe a certain thing and think a certain thing, that's for them to decide. I mean, this is, after all, a free world. They can think how they want to. And if they're ever open to hearing maybe the opposite opinion about something, they can always come to me now, and we can talk. Just like you said, right? If you're open for open dialogue, if you want to have a conversation and we can have a proper, like, a discussion based on facts, okay, that is fine. I'll be happy to do that with you. But arguing and politics and even voting, I mean,
Mm,
I, I don't really see it making sense anymore, because you have people, just like you said, so polarized on each side, and that's, no one is like that in real life. It's just
yeah,
two minorities on each side yelling and screaming, but in the end, most people are in here. So it's two very small groups that makes everyone hate each other. And is that the goal? I don't know. Maybe it is.
yeah. That's a good question.
Yeah.
That we could have a whole hour and a half podcast on just that.
Yeah.
What is the goal, right?
Yeah.
But it's. I mean, it's just that. It's like when most people say, "Oh, um, like the right would say something like, okay, it's disgusting that trans people shouldn't exist, right? Like the
Mhm.
super polarized end of things, and they would say something like trans people shouldn't exist. Whereas on the flip hand side, it's like, oh, um, all all people on the right don't believe in science and are just crazy, crazy Christians. It's like, no, hold on a second. There is this, just like you and I, we're both very religious people. Well, recently I found that, sort of refound that side and working on it. But at the same time, it's like I'm one of the most scientifically minded brains there is, right? It's like there is a way in which you can live in both worlds and be happy and
Yeah.
continue to be yourself, right? And I think a lot of people just miss that middle ground, but they miss it to the point as to their own self deficit, right?
That's a very good point. Yeah.
I mean, at the end of the day, I think everything really comes down to what you and I have been saying is really just to kind of find your own middle ground. You know, look at both sides, do a little bit of yin and yang, and figure that out,
Mm.
right? Because it's like at the same time as well, just even now, you've got this crazy dynamic between men and women as well, right? Like, what's your kind of opinion just in regards to the general or the kind of dynamic that you want in a kind of relationship with your significant other?
Yeah, I mean, my relationship with my girlfriend is very very traditional, and that's how I like it. But it's also because I am the type of man who has invested in myself and worked in myself. So she should, and she does, feel safe around me, and have faith in me, and she trusts me because she has seen that I've actually done the work. You have all these guys saying, yeah, I want traditional roles between men and women. But then you see them sitting there and doing nothing, not working on themselves with their big bellies and saying, ah, no, we want to go back to being traditional. But exactly, these men would never have access to anyone, to any girl at all, if they were like this when everything was traditional. So everything is being less and less men, the men who are actually doing the work are getting more and more of the girls, which makes sense. From a biological standpoint, it makes sense because women, they want to feel safe. Financially, emotionally, they want to feel safe. And they won't feel safe with a guy who is just playing computer games every single day, doing that nonstop. They won't feel safe, right? They'll settle with them when they're 28, 29 because of other factors, but they won't pick him when they're 21, 22, when they're at their best.
Yeah.
So obviously I I work for I want a traditional relationship. That's that's the only thing that I can accept because I know what I've done. And that's the only thing that I accept from my girls as well. There's no doubt about that.
I mean, it makes perfect sense because, I mean, why a lot of men hate this idea of monogamy, right? And they're like, right, but why are all of these beautiful women only going for the rich guys? And it's like, well, they're doing that because a woman should want the best. She should want to feel safe and protected, be that, financially, physically, and I think a woman can only really show her love genuinely when she's kind of surrendered herself, right? And surrendered herself to that safety and to that masculine energy. Just the same as I think that a man can only ever really fulfill every need and love someone as much when we have that what's the word, support, that unquestionable support, right? That, baby, don't worry about it, whatever you need, it's done, kind of thing. And I think that that's such a beautiful thing, because when you look at these guys that you were just saying, bro, why would a woman surrender to you? They're not going to, because you've surrendered yourself to the fucking PlayStation,
Exactly.
Like,
yeah, they want to surrender to people like you. I mean, you've shown beautiful receipts, and it makes sense, right? You're taking care of yourself. You're smart. You know what you're doing. Of course, they want to trust you. Of course, they want to surrender to you. There's no doubt about that.
And it's just that if you prove yourself in the great gladiator arena of life, which includes health, which includes your spirituality, your finances, your mindset, your perspective, God, it's absolutely everything. But if you as a man, you're fulfilling that and you're doing all of that, guess what? Of course she's going to surrender to you.
Yeah.
Because you've proven yourself. Whereas most men, I think they don't even try, right? Why do you think that most of these, I don't even want to call them men because it's kind of embarrassing for me, but why do you think that most of these guys don't even get in the ring?
The thing is, it's we have to acknowledge the fact that it's hard being a man. It really is being hard. It really is, because you have to go to work, you have to focus on yourself, you have to go to the gym, you need to make money, you need to do all these things, and you need to do them when you don't feel like doing them. And that's what most of these guys don't want to, because they've been raised, like the past couple of generations have just had it so easy. I don't want to say that my generation hasn't had it easy, because I'm still very young, but we've had a very, I mean, we're not suffering at all. But that's why I think it should be an even bigger motivation to do something better with your life, because you don't have the basic needs. Like the basic needs are already fulfilled. You already have the food, you already have shelter. Like, why wouldn't you go for something more? And I don't think that these men or boys, or whatever we want to call them, um, actually want to work on themselves and do what they have to do. They want to stay at home and they want to feel bad for themselves, because it is hard. I mean, it really is. And society tells them that they cannot be a man. They should be silent in class. They shouldn't work on themselves. It's what's the word? Toxic masculinity, right? It's toxic masculinity if you go to work out. So all of these guys are listening to the women who they actually want, and the women are telling them, "Don't do this. It's toxic." And if you can't acknowledge the fact that you shouldn't listen to these girls in terms of what they want and what they don't want, you're perplexed in terms of what you do, because the girls are saying, no, that's toxic, don't do that. And then you don't do it, but you still don't get any girls. So I think it's very hard being a man. You really have to do the work. And most people tell you not to do the work, that you have enough in yourself. And I don't think that's true at all. That's girls, that's women. They are enough in and of themselves. But as men, we have to build something out of ourselves. Yeah,
It's not easy. I mean, that much is a given, right? But it's almost like the lack of suffering that we feel especially in the Western world, right? The lack of suffering that we feel, you have to go and search for that,
mm-hmm.
you know, and it's something you kind of need. Everyone knows, okay, you need to make yourself feel uncomfortable, right? It's like everyone always says, get outside of your comfort zone. It's like, no, it's not get out of your comfort zone. It's build, destroy the one that you've got, be grateful for it, and then create a brand new one where that new comfort zone is so unimaginably different to where you currently are. And I mean, I think that you'd agree that when it comes down into doing that is one of the hardest things to do, right? Like, when did that start for you? Was it when you were playing football? Was it when things were happening with your mum, or uni, work? When did it start dawning on you that I've got to be better?
Yeah. I think when you ask that question, I always remember when I was 11, 12 years old. I'd played football for a couple of years, and I was good, but I didn't really take it that seriously. I like to I wanted to program, and I like to program on my computer, like make websites and stuff like that. And then one summer, I hadn't really went outside. I had just sat on my computer and just made websites and stuff like that. So when I went back to playing football, I had put on some weight, and I couldn't last as long on the field. I wouldn't start the games like I used to do. And then I quickly realized, okay, I need to do something about this. And then the next summer, I went training every single day. I got in very, very good shape. And that's where that's when I really made the decision that I know that I am actually the best one on this team. They don't acknowledge that, and I need to show them. So I went on, and I remember talking to my coach. Um, I was injured for 2 weeks, and he asked me. We were doing some laps and training before in the preseason, and he was asking me, "So, do you think you would be the one in the best shape?" I said, "Yes, of course I would." And he said, "Okay, let's see." And then when I came back from injury, I was the best one in shape because that was the thing that I had determined that I wanted to be. So I think it was back then when I was 11, 12 years old that, okay, you need to do the work. And if you don't do the work, nothing will come. You can't just sit there. You can't just sit by a computer and program nice games, which was fun. But I wanted to be a football player. And to do that, I had to go train. So I did that. And my work resulted in me being the best. And a couple of years later, being called up to the youth national team as well. So I think it came from there. And then when I went to high school as well, like doing homework, I used to do homework every single day. And sometimes I would go to sleep at 2 a.m. and then wake up at 6:30 to go to school again because I needed A's to get into medical school. I knew I wanted to be a doctor. So I wanted A's in every single thing. And I got A's in every single thing. But I did the work as well. I read and I studied and I did my homework. But I partied as well. I had fun.
That's
Uh,
there we go. Now we're getting into the juicy bit.
yeah, I had a lot of fun in high school. I did. They would say I was the first one to turn in my papers and to turn up at the club. So
Great. That's a good accolade. I
yeah,
mean, for me, well, I was just the first one in the club. That was like I was
yeah.
done. But it's interesting. So you have all of this going on, and you finally to just kind of make this just discovery of right. I need to be a man and everything else. So, how did it feel when you had that final injury that just took you out?
But you can't ask me about that. That's no, I've thought about that a lot, and it was my identity back then, being a footballer. It was very, very hard. I don't want to say I got depressed, but I was very, very sad because my day-to-day life was training every single day. I would train 6 days a week, sometimes have two trainings a day, and then a match in the weekend and maybe in the midweek as well. And when I went from doing that to training 0 times a week, sorry, like not playing football at all, that was that was a change that I had to get used to. I remember when I went out one day, maybe 2 3 months after I stopped playing football. One of my former teammates in the national team said, "Oh, all the footballers are here tonight," and I really felt it in my heart because I that's not how I saw myself anymore. I wanted to see myself that way, but I wasn't a footballer anymore. So it's hard to say an identity crisis because I was only 16, 17. But that's how I saw myself. I was the footballer. That was me. I wasn't the doctor. I was the footballer. So I had to recreate that identity and figure out what I wanted to do with my life, which wasn't football.
That must have been fucking hard, though, bro.
It was a challenge, and it took me some time. But when I look back on my time as a footballer, it was amazing. I've traveled the world. I've done some very, very nice things. Played in different countries against some of the top teams in Europe. It's a beautiful thing to remember, and that's just what it is. Memories now.
So, what would you say would be the best memory of all of them, of absolutely everything? When was that moment where I guess you felt so proud, happy, and just good that you kind of almost felt close to God?
I think I have several actually, and I think that you actually need to make new very very good memories for maybe not every single year, but not stop at like 21 or 22 by making very good memories. I remember the first time I got called up to the national team. That was a very good memory. I was happy, as happy as I'd ever been when I was 15. I remember when I got into medical school. That was a very happy day as well. I remember when I finished medical school. Um, so I think that you need to create these very, very nice memories all the time. And those are just some of them.
Who was the first person that you called
When what?
when you figured out when you were accepted into medical school and when you got the call for the national team?
Well, I called my I actually didn't call. I was at home. I got the call at home, and my mother was home as well. So I went in and told her straight, and she was the first one to know. When I got the call that I got into medical school, I was actually coming home from a vacation. So I came home at 1 a.m. In the morning, and they had sent out the call at like 12 a.m. at midnight. So my parents already knew because they knew what my average grades were, and so at midnight they publicize what the average grades are for everyone who enters medical school and all the other studies in Denmark. So they knew what my average was, and they knew what the average was for the people who got in. So they already
Ah,
knew that I got in when I came back. Um, so they were obviously very happy. But they were the first people that I saw when I got back. Them and my little brother. Yeah.
what's it like with just your family now? Because you guys always seem like you've had this. I was going to say perfect because it never is, but as a family unit, you guys seem to have been like super, super, super strong and together, which I think is probably the most important thing, when facing the world, right? But what's it like for you guys now? What's the relationship like now with your parents, with your little brother?
I have a very, very good relationship with both my parents and my little brother. I look up to my father. I love my mother and love my little brother as well. So we have a very good relationship. Obviously, a lot of things have changed because I've evolved in a way that they didn't expect that much. Obviously, they say this all the time. They expected I would do good things, and I'm a doctor, and that's very good. But I do other things as well. And so they're really happy about that, and that has changed some of the. What can you say? I used to get, and I still get advice from my father, but now I give him advice as well.
That's nice.
Yeah.
That's super nice. It's one of those things. I mean, being able to even ask for advice or from your father
Can you say that
is,
again? Sorry.
yeah. So even just giving or getting advice from your father
Mm,
is one of those things that I don't think many people notice how good that feels at the time until you kind of can't do it anymore.
yeah.
And that's amazing. But then, certainly when you give advice to your father, that's just, yeah, that's when you're like, it's a rite of manhood, I think.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. It's something else. It really is something else. And I'm very grateful that I still have both my father and my mother that they can give me advice. And I'm grateful every single day for every piece of advice they give me, even though I don't agree every single time. I'm still happy and I thank God that I still have them because there will be one day where I won't get that advice anymore. Um, but yeah, just exactly like you said, being able to give advice back, and not only that, but having them asking me for stuff, that's very fulfilling. That's very nice.
I mean, it has to be. But this is one of those things. If you didn't work on yourself, if you didn't go through that suffering and heartache and discipline and training every single day, then they wouldn't, right? And I think that really should always be the biggest motivation for people is to be or for men anyway, is to work on yourself so hard to look after your family, because that's it. Whether you have a good relationship with them or not is irrelevant.
Yeah.
To be able to look after them, and for them to be able to come to you and know that the advice that you're going to give is going to be good. And speaking about advice, so where can people come and find you online to get some more advice and hear more from you?
They can check me out on Rumble and on IG and on Twitter as well. Actually, I have the same handle. It's Raphael Al-Najaar, just in one. That's where they can find me. I only help actually men becoming healthier and stronger by doing a lot of things.
A lot of things, and those things are kept, like we said, behind closed doors, because that's where the real information's at, right? Well, look, I don't want to take up any more of your time, because I know that you've got 101 other meetings and whatnot to do today. So really appreciate the time, brother. And as always, we'll hopefully get you on for another one. If you guys have some questions that you want me to ask Rafa for the next one, pop them down below. Don't forget to give us a like, give him a follow. I'm going to pop it up on screen now so that you guys can go ahead, give him a follow on Instagram, Twitter, and on Rumble, because his Rumble videos are just starting and they're going to be killer. So again, thank you so much, bro. And we'll speak very soon.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure as always talking to you.